For NYUp.com, I'm Matt Parrino, and the Buffalo Bills at 2-3 are headed to Houston this Sunday to take on the Texans. Both teams 2-3. I've brought in Sean Pendergast from SportsRadio 610 in Houston. Break down this game, preview it a bit for you guys. It's a big game for both of these teams at 2-3. You go to 2-4, and you never know how long you're going to stay in the playoff race. But before we get to previewing this game, let's talk about last week. The Texans on Sunday night defeated the Dallas Cowboys, and the Bills in a stunning upset took out the 3-1 Tennessee Titans. If you could for us real quick, Sean, recap 30 seconds or so what happened in that game.
Yeah, the game last week, the story of that game was the Texans' failures in the red zone. They won the game, and that's obviously the most important thing. They're back to 2-3 on the season after digging themselves an 0-3 hole. But they only scored on one drive inside the red zone. They were goal to go 4 different times in that game. And I think there's a lot of concern in Houston over two things. Deshaun Watson's health, because he is taking so many hits this year, both in the pocket and outside the pocket. And I think just some of the play calling. They ran 13 plays that weren't field goals inside goal to go situations. They were in shotgun for 11 of those plays. You know, in a situation where most teams are just able to line it up and kind of pound it in, the Texans, they're not executing right now in the red zone. That'll be a big story this week. They have no problem moving the ball in between the 20-yard lines, the Texans, but when they get inside the opposing 20-yard line, they've had a lot of problems this year. And that wasn't the case last year in the 6 games that Deshaun Watson played.
Mm-hmm. For the Bills, I mean, you talk about trouble protecting the quarterback. Last week, kind of an aberration after 7 sacks against the Packers. The Bills' offensive line did a good job keeping the Titans at bay. Josh Allen was only sacked 1 time in that game, and it turned into, a defensive struggle, and that's what, head coach Sean McDermott, his strength coming over from the Carolina Panthers. He's had a great defense now going into his second season. They had their bumps in the road to start the year, but looks like they're kind of firing on all cylinders at this point in the season. That pass rush is going to have to get going this week. It got going last week. Didn't have a ton of sacks against Marcus Mariota, but it made things uncomfortable for him. Held him to 129 yards passing in that game in Buffalo, but going on the road is a completely different story. And, this week, the Bills went into Minnesota week 3, knocked them off 27-6. It was kind of everything working together. You know what I mean? Like they were able to execute on offense, take advantage of the opportunities that their defense created. And that's been the storyline with this team, is creating turnovers, and they have to do it. Now, you talked about Deshaun Watson and, him getting hit this year. And I saw the Pro Football Focus put out their offensive line rankings, and the Texans were ranked 31st in the league out of 32 teams. So break that down for us. I mean, how bad are things on that offensive line? Is that a serious concern for this team going forward this season?
It's been a concern all year long. It was a concern in the offseason when they didn't really make any moves at offensive tackle, either in the draft or in free agency. The 2 tackles they started the season with were Julian Davenport, who's a second-year guy with just 2 starts, and then a guy you're familiar with, I'm sure, in Buffalo, Chantrell Henderson, was their starting right tackle at the beginning of the year. He got hurt in the very first game. So they've had kind of a revolving door of Kendall Lamb and Davenport. Rookie Martinez Rankin has been in there at tackle. They seemed to find a combination last week that worked by putting Davenport back at left tackle and putting Kendall Lamb at right tackle. The interior of the line's been okay, the 2 guards in the center. They actually protected, like Buffalo last week, they protected their quarterback pretty well against the Cowboys. Deshaun Watson only got sacked 1 time, and that was actually kind of a scramble play by him that just wound up with lost yardage. It wasn't a true sack given up by the offensive line where he's in the pocket and just gets waylaid like he had been for the first 4 games of the season. I think both of these teams, Matt, are probably similarly on the front 7 on defense, licking their chops at playing this game on Sunday. I know you mentioned the Bills probably are with this Texans offensive line. I know they're ranked 31st. They've played better of late protecting Deshaun Watson. What they need to do, though, and they actually did this pretty well the first 2 games of the year, they need to line up and be able to run the football. I think that's a lot of the reasons why they're having trouble in the red zone, is Bill O'Brien doesn't have confidence that this offensive line can move anybody to go get that yard or 2 that you need to get over the goal line. But you hit on it. The biggest concern is protecting Deshaun Watson right now. There was a lot of rumor and kind of smoke swirling around the building this week that he might miss this game. It doesn't sound like he's going to now. He and O'Brien both confirming yesterday that he is likely going to play on Sunday. But the offensive line, along with the secondary, specifically the corners, are the two biggest concerns on this team from a personnel standpoint.
You talk about running the ball, getting the running game going, and that's exactly what the Bills did last week. LaShawn McCoy finished with 85 yards, 100 yards of total offense, including what he did in the passing game. And that's a big accomplishment for McCoy, who is used to the big numbers. It's been a struggle this season. He went into that game last week after 4 weeks with just he hadn't even hit 100 yards rushing on the season yet. So this week, obviously, you talk about the big news in Houston. The big news in Buffalo is trade rumors. LaShawn McCoy could be on the trading block. You could tell that head coach Sean McDermott is a big fan of LaShawn McCoy, has a lot of respect for him. Was around him in Philadelphia when he was a coach there, and he's a guy that I think that this team looks to kind of be that leader. But at 2-3, and that record may be a little bit better than this team is, I think that the Bills are going to maybe dabble in the trading waters and see what they can potentially get for him. But he will be there Sunday, and like you said, that's going to be a very important part of this game for the Bills. Josh Allen has shown spurts. He's shown that he has the ability to make plays with his feet, which is something that I think most experts thought he was going to be able to do because of his athleticism before the season. But on the other side, on the other quarterback side with Watson, you spoke a little bit about him. What's his game like? Because I feel like when you look at the stats and you watch the highlight reels, he's kind of a dual threat. He can do it both through the air and with his feet. Is he an underrated passer in your opinion?
I think so. I don't know if he's underrated anymore, Matt, because people have now seen him at the NFL level for a handful of games, for, I guess, 11 games now. And, people can see like, wow, he's got a really strong arm. He's got a very accurate arm. He throws a nice deep ball. He's got great ball placement. But I don't think he had a very respected arm coming into the league back in 2017. Otherwise, I don't think he would have fallen to 12th in the draft. I think if you redid that 2017 draft, Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes are probably going 1 and 2 in either order in that draft. Trubisky right there as well. So I think if teams looked at it again, for example, Jacksonville was picking 4th in that draft. You don't think they would take Deshaun Watson right now instead of Leonard Fournette in that draft? So I think he was underrated and maybe a little disrespected coming into the league, but I think people kind of know now Deshaun can throw the football. As far as kind of doing a sort of a scouting report on his game, he's very athletic. Despite some of the hits that people saw him take on Sunday against the Cowboys that were his decision, he's typically a very smart runner with his body. He's good at knowing when to slide and when to get out of bounds. The times where he was taking big hits on Sunday were kind of high leverage situations where he's down near the goal line and he's trying to get into the end zone as opposed to sliding or running out of bounds. But I think maybe one of Deshaun Watson's greatest characteristics is also one of his greatest flaws in that he believes, and he always believes that he can make a play, that he can make something out of nothing. And at times that works to his detriment. He winds up taking sacks he shouldn't take when he should just throw the ball out of bounds and live to fight another day. He winds up taking unnecessary hits, trying to get across the goal line when he's got to get through 3 guys from the 4-yard line, all bigger than him. So he's a gamer. I think people know his background, obviously his credentials in terms of playing in big moments and the stage never being too big for him are well documented. He's someone that has the city of Houston really, really optimistic about the next decade of football here. They've never had anything like him with the Texans here in Houston. So it's really exciting. He just needs to stay healthy.
Definitely. One big strength of the Bills' defense, you're talking about Deshaun Watson and what he's going to be able to do this week. Obviously, he has DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best receivers in the league. On the other side for the Bills, it's been Tre'Davious White, who's been a real discovery. I mean, a late first-round pick last year. He had a great rookie season, and he's carried it over into the second season. I think a lot of the talk in the offseason was, okay, he had a big rookie season, played really well, but what was that going to transition to this year? Is going to still be able to play at a high level, and early on he's been an absolute shutdown corner for the Bills. Unfortunately for the Bills, it might be he might have tweaked his ankle in practice yesterday. He's on the injury report, limited in practice yesterday, and obviously going up against Hopkins, you want to be at 100%, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on. But on the defensive side, shifting really quick for the Houston Texans, I think fans take a look at the roster, the depth chart. They take a look and see J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney. I mean, really, for all intents and purposes, one of the most, notorious defensive, end duos in the league. How are they performing this season, and how is J.J. Watt looking coming off of that injury?
Yeah, what's crazy about that is I think, there's obviously a gigantic respect factor around the league for both guys. Watt, a future Hall of Famer and a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. And Clowney, I think he's been a Pro Bowler the last 2 years, but I think still a lot of people here feel like he hasn't hit his ceiling yet. He still never had a double-digit sack season, which has some people kind of, that's still kind of sticks in the craw of some fans here. He's still a highly effective player, very good in the run, defending the run. He's always among the league leader in tackles for loss. But it sounds crazy to say this, and you kind of have to be here to track this sort of thing. But these last 2 games where they've both been anywhere from good to great together is really the first time since they drafted Jadeveon Clowney that the two of them have had great games at the same time. And people may be watching and listening to this going, oh, really? Yeah, Clowney got drafted in 2014. But yeah, Clowney was injured his whole rookie year in 2014. He was injured for a lot of his second year in 2015. And then J.J. Watt missed most of 2016 and 2017. These two guys haven't been fully healthy and fully activated at the same time for the 4 seasons that they've been teammates up until this year. And even the first 3 games of this year, Clowney was very lackluster. And then he really broke out in that game against the Colts in week 4 when he was the defensive player of the week in the AFC. Watt, the defensive player of the month in the AFC for September. And that kind of speaks to your second part of the question, Matt. J.J. Watt is back to being the old J.J. Watt. And there was obviously a lot of concern about that coming into the season. 2 back surgeries a couple of years ago, a broken leg and a mangled knee last year. 2 really traumatic injuries, not to mention just all the wear and tear that he's taken from playing literally 95% of the snaps when he's been healthy. But the numbers.
You bring that up, Sean, you bring that up. It's so interesting that you say that because, Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills system, they only play their defensive linemen literally 50 to 60 snaps per game. So just that in and of itself, the amount of that J.J. Watt is able to play, I feel like that speaks to how great he is.
2017, he played every game, and he played well over 90% of the snaps in every game at a position where you're wrestling bears on every single play. When you're J.J. Watt, you're going up against left tackles and right tackles and double teams and triple teams and running backs chipping you in the ribs. He gets the full attention of every opponent that he plays, even with Clowney and Whitney Merciless on his team. The guy they still go after most of the time with double teams is J.J. Watt, deservedly so. He's a great player. That was a big topic coming into the season is J.J. Watt going to see the same amount of activity that he had seen when he was peak Watt back in 2014 and 2015? The answer's been yes. He's been physically ready for it. He's been physically up for it. He's tied with his brother, TJ, for the lead in sacks. They both have 6 sacks on the season. And he's been great. The numbers don't speak to how really, really good and disruptive he's been this year.
Okay, so before I let you get out of here, Sean, let's quick fire go through our keys to the game here. I'll start it off for the Bills. My first key is protecting Josh Allen. I mean, it's cliche and it's something that's so simple, but it's so important, especially when you're going against a defensive line like this on the road in hostile territory. I'm sure that stadium's going to be rocking, and for this offensive line that at times this season hasn't shown that it's able to protect Josh Allen. He's had to do a lot with his feet. I think you want to get him going, make him feel comfortable on the road, a la Week 3 against Minnesota. And, you hear the dog in the background there. But yeah, that's my first key to the game.
Mine's sleeping like 10 feet away.
Nice. Go ahead. What's yours first?
Oh, my key. Are we going back and forth, kind of dueling pianos here? Keys to the game?
Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay. My first key to the game is for the Texans is prevent empty yardage. And what I mean by that is that Titans game back in week 2, I compare this game similarly to that, where I think the Texans have a significant talent advantage over who they're playing. The only way that I think the Bills stay in this game are to get plays like the Titans did. People probably saw that fake punt that they ran against the Texans on a set that they saw in special teams, a 66-yard touchdown. Turnovers cause empty yardage, interception returns. So I think the Texans, just in general, they're going to win in the box score in this game. They're going to get 400, 450 yards of offense. I feel confident in that. I feel confident they're going to hold the Bills to about 300 yards at the most. What they can't allow are big plays on special teams and in the big plays in the return game and big, if they turn the ball over, make sure it's, that the turnover dies there, that it's not something where it allows the Bills to set up with good field position.
Mm-hmm. For me, number 2 is keep Deshaun Watson in the pocket, or at least try to. I mean, it's easy for us to say from the sidelines, but I talked to, Bills defensive end, Shaq Lawson, Jerry Hughes this week, and that's the big, that's the big goal this week, is to try to just make life difficult on Deshaun Watson as much as possible, because, he can make plays wherever he is. I mean, sometimes you watch the highlights and he's flushed out, 2 guys right on him, and he kind of wings one out, and you don't even know how he's getting it done. So I think, if you can kind of come up with a game plan, and Sean McDermott has demonstrated over the course of his career that he's able to kind of devise something to at least frustrate the opposing quarterback, I think that gives him a better chance.
Yeah, he's actually, some would say he's even a better thrower on the move. He's more comfortable kind of improvising out of the pocket or throwing on rollouts. So I think that's a great one. My second one is cut the head off the snake. And what I mean by that is I think the Texans are looking at this Bills team similar to the way they looked at the Cowboys last week. That Ezekiel Elliott is the guy who makes everything go for the Cowboys, the same way that I think LaShawn McCoy is sort of he's the engine. It's not the fuel for the engine. It is the Bills offense. He's a dangerous 3-down back. He can catch the ball in the backfield. He is, like he did last week, he's good for well over 20 touches a game if they need him to. So I think the game plan is going to be similar, where if you shut down LaShawn McCoy, I think you shut down that Bills up. Prevent their ability to run the football. It puts them in bad down and distance situations, and that puts Josh Allen, a rookie quarterback, going against a veteran, aggressive front seven and a really good defensive coordinator, Romeo Crennel. Puts Allen in a really bad spot as a rookie on the road.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And finally, for me, it's the key to victory all throughout the Sean McDermott era. Win the turnover battle. I mean, this offense is limited. Their talent level at the wide receiver position and the offensive line isn't very deep. So what you have to do is you have to do what they did last week and turn the ball over, force fumbles. They're one of the best teams in the league at getting in on guys, whether it be the ball carrier or the quarterback, going for the strip. And they got to do that this week. I mean, this is a very potent, high-powered offense at home where, it's something that I think is important to remember, that early on it's hard to kind of see what a team's going to be. And as you kind of move along in the season, as we're getting into week 6 here, you're going to start to see teams kind of gelling and getting things together. And I feel like a Deshaun Watson, a healthy Deshaun Watson with DeAndre Hopkins 6 weeks in this season is a scary thought.
Yeah, and Deshaun Watson and the Texans in general have thrown an interception, I want to say, in 20 straight games. Deshaun's had one in all 5 games this year. And they've largely been his fault. They haven't been tipped balls or just a fluky interception. They've been interceptions that have been a product of poor decision making and Deshaun trying to do too much. So the Texans, I say that to back up your point, in that the Texans are, at least their quarterback is kind of ripe for that sort of thing. My third key is get a lead. And I know that sounds very basic, but Buffalo fans may not know this. The Texans have not scored first in any of their games this year. And in some of the games, they've fallen behind big. 27-6 to the Patriots, 14-0 to the Titans, 20-3 at home to the New York Giants. And then they fell behind in the last couple games that they went on to win. They didn't fall behind by those big deficits like they did those first 3. They were more manageable deficits. But don't fall behind, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, you at least you get off the schneid of being the team to score first. I think secondly is that you don't. I think one of the things in that Bills game against the Vikings is the Bills were all over the Vikings right out of the chute, and all of a sudden you've got a team that's undermanned but believing that they can win the football game. The sooner that the Texans can disconnect the belief that the Bills have they can win the game, the better off they'll be. Bill O'Brien also 23-1 in games that he's led at the half, so that's the other important part about getting a lead in this game. O'Brien is typically a very good coach when it comes to making adjustments at halftime to keep a lead in a game.
Perfect. Sean, thank you so much for all of your breakdown here, getting us more ready for Sunday. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find you on social media?
Sure. My Twitter account is @Sean T. Pendergast. Sean is spelled S-E-A-N-T, and then Pendergast is spelled like it sounds. You can get me on Facebook as well. I'm on Instagram, but I'm not active on Instagram. But if you want to go follow me for just a vapid pool of nothing, you can follow me. I will start posting on Instagram soon, I promise. But Twitter and Facebook, especially Twitter, the best places to get me. And if you are so inclined, I do afternoons, as you mentioned, Matt, on Sports Radio 610. And you can stream my show on the radio.com app if you're not in Houston.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sean. And guys, for all your Buffalo Bills content, keep it locked on NYUp.com, and we'll see you Sunday for the game.